It's Sam Swikowski here from the Fremantle Dockers, and you are listening to the Footy Mailbag podcast with Damo and Clarky.
Hello and welcome to the Footy Mailbag. This is episode 3 of our team preview series, and this episode is featuring Richmond, North Melbourne, Melbourne and Gold Coast. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Damo, and joining me as he usually does is Clarky. How are you, my friend?
Doing good. It's another week, and we get to talk about my team this week.
Yeah, we do.
You motherfucker.
And our special guest today is none other than the number one fan of the father-son rule, Lekdog. Thanks for being here.
I'll walk, mate. I will walk off this damn podcast. Thank you for having me on for the 4 most boring teams in the AFL. Appreciate it.
I'll speak for him. Clarky resents that.
No, hey, look. Melbourne might be a mess behind the scenes, unable to keep players on track and up to behavioural standards. They might be boring, but what was the fourth thing that you said?
They are not a porn star.
Yeah, that.
Before we get started, I just want to remind our listeners that Supercoach starts in round 1, not opening round. Your team will be open to tinker with all through the first 4 games of the season. You'll be able to see role, rookies, and form. But the players who feature an opening round will have an extra bye that we have to navigate. All bye rounds will be best 18, and those opening round players will also rise or fall in price a week earlier than everyone else. If you can't tell, I was reading that because I had to write that down.
So if you've listened to that, you won't retain it. We'll send you notes.
I don't even remember what we were talking about. So,
like, the closer we get to the start of the season, we're seeing different strategies to do with the early buy rounds. Some people are even changing tact based on prices and what is being found to probably be the optimal team structure. But we're also getting to the point of the preseason where the lack of information is causing people to go around in circles. What strategy are you thinking might be what works in the end?
I made my team on the day Team Picker opened, and the first time I've opened it is right now, and I have 150 grand in the bank. Team looks pretty good though. There's a few rules to stick by when you're playing Supercoach. One, and I know Abs is going to hate this. Just to calm down, etc., etc. Don't worry about the buys. Who cares? We'll vibe it out. 2, trade ass off. 3, don't start anyone in defense or forward over 550k. You do those 3 things, you're going to be fine. I'm telling you, you're going to be fine. Don't stress about it, baby.
I agree.
I was considering not even making a team this year at one point, to be honest with you. So I'm obviously going to, because I can't get that itch, out of my body. But I don't have the mental fortitude to stress too much about optimal team structure and stuff. I'm going to get the players that I want in. I'm going to try and spread out my players across a few different teams. I don't want to load up on too many from one team. And honestly, there's always so many injuries, so many role changes that your starting plan always gets thrown out by round 3. Like, you're going to start Nick Dacos and Bontempelli and I don't know, Sam Flanders and Max Gawn, and by round 2, you're going to have to trade 2 of those guys probably. So I try not to worry about it too much.
Based on that advice, I'd also like to point out that I have a post-it note on my computer screen that is actually advice that you gave me, I believe, about 2 years ago, which literally just says pick players you actually want. And that's probably as true as ever.
Yeah, look, last year, I finished about, 2,900, which I know some people listening will say that's crap, but I know a lot of people listening will think that's pretty good. And I didn't really abide by the rules. I'm looking at my finishing team. On my bench, I had Himmelberg, Redmond, Mills, Jack McRae, and I still had full primo team on the field. So, and I just picked guys I liked, and I just picked guys who had low break evens when they had low break evens, and I cashed out guys when they had high break evens. And like, if you do that again, I reckon most of the time you're probably going to be okay.
In this week's episode, as I said at the top of the show, we'll be covering North Melbourne, Melbourne, Gold Coast, and Richmond, and Lekdog as our guest. Which part of the ground would you like us to start with?
I mean, look, why break a perfect formula? Let's start in defense, top to bottom.
All right, so starting in defense, and we're starting with Harry Sheezel. North Melbourne, defender, averaged 99.5 in 23 games, 90 scores above 16. In fact, all of his scores above 90 were above 98. So the rest of his scores were all under 79. He's 556,200, and, well, is he a premium?
Unfortunately, too expensive for me. It's a really hard rule. It's a really difficult rule for playing Supercoach. But his run home is particularly delicious. The last few games, 103, 126, 114, 56, 135, 136, and 114. Not to mention all the tons he had at the start of the year. It's not often you look at the second-year player. Obviously, Dacos is probably one of the few exceptions to that rule, but Sheezel might be the next one. He's bloody good. The only question is role. I actually would prefer him behind the ball than in the midfield, just from a Supercoach scoring perspective in terms of, is his body up to the full midfield time? And then they've brought in a couple of guys, which apparently they're trialing behind the ball. So there's a question mark over role for me, but I think you can look at him as a primo. However, he's probably a little overpriced for my personal comfort to be starting him in my team.
I just worry that even though he had such a great first season, it because the ball was down there so many times that he had such a great output. If he moves up the field, is he going to have as much opportunity to score as well as he did in his first season? Which then brings the question, is he a premium, and does this make him very overpriced?
I'm gonna try and keep it real simple this year when I'm building my team, and I'm gonna look at every player I look at and go, what's probably gonna happen? Is there upside in this selection? Will they lose price and I can pick them up cheaper later on, or will they roughly produce the same? And if they're gonna roughly produce the same, I actually think you can probably avoid them to start. If he produces the same and averages 100, that's good. But I think we can find other defenders later on in the season for a cheaper price that average 100 points for the year. So he's probably going to be very similar. There's enough question marks, and at 560k, he's just a tad too high. However, I don't know about you, Clarky. I think he'll be a good pod selection. I imagine you'll probably be really happy if you do start him.
I think you pointed out the biggest issue that we have with Sheezel at the moment is that question of role. So the training reports indicate that he's been playing more mid-forward, and Zach Fisher, I believe, is the one that they're sort of saying he's going to play a bit behind the ball, which I'm sure you'll have plenty to talk about, So at 550, it's probably a better idea to maybe fade him. It's a great pod selection, like you said, but it might be better to fade him for someone more consistent if you're going to put up a decent price for a player.
I think I want to know, is he going to continue taking kick-ins? He took in like 3 or 4 on average last year. The games where he had 0 kick-ins, 98, 79, 112 was good, 107, 53, like they're middling scores. Kick-ins are guaranteed points. Is he going to be the one kicking in? If not, then I'm probably less interested.
There's also a big Aaron Hall and Jack Zeeble shaped hole in the back line of North, as well as a certain player who may be facing some AFL House sanctions.
Look, there's opportunities there. I just don't think there's necessarily a massive upside.
Yeah.
Next player on our list is Jayden Short at Richmond. Averaged 98.6 across 16 games with 12 scores above 90, $551,200. Just outside the range that you can select him, Lekdog.
Yeah, he's $1,200 too expensive. I'll tell you what, I would probably, if I really wanted a Jayden Short, I'd probably be able to talk myself into the $1,200. Again, role question mark. Love him when he's playing in defense. Can go missing in terms of injuries. Can go missing as in out of the team because of injuries. New coach. You'd think he wants some stability back in defense. You think you probably put the ball in Jayden Short's hand. I can't imagine he becomes or continues to be the midfielder he was sort of 2022. I think probably underpriced. If I'm looking at my what is probably going to happen view of things, I think Jayden Short is probably going to outperform. What's he priced to average 98? Probably going to outperform that. Could go 105 if he's playing a defensive role. If I'm a new coach, that's where I'm playing him. I think there's some upside in Jayden Short as a selection.
And what about the next player on this list, Nick Vlaston, 92.1 across 21 games in 2023, 11 games above 90, 514,700. Clarky, does Nick Vlaston have any interest to you?
Out of the two, I'd probably have to side with Jayden Short. Nick Vlaston is a talented footballer, but I think you're putting your best guy on the job, and that at the moment seems to be Jayden Short. So Vlaston doesn't really tempt me, but I don't know, like if you could be talked into just about anyone, but
I can be talked into anyone.
yeah,
Not Nick Vlaston. Look, he's cheap at 514k, right? Average 92, but he very much feels like, to me, every year we get these defenders that float around the 500k price. They dip to 460, they jump up to 560. They're sort of in that scale, and they all pretty much do the same thing. Do I want to start one that I don't think has a huge amount of upside? If I'm backing in Richmond's defensive structure, I think if there's extra points to go around, however you want to put it, I think they're getting pumped into Jayden Short more than Nick Vlaston. I think as a draft prospect, he's going to be safe because he's going to give you 90 points a game. I think that's a good thing. But I think if we're talking salary cap, the more likely in my mind to benefit from that, the new coach and putting the ball in your good users' hands is going to be Jayden Short.
I'm a big Nick Vlaston fan. I wouldn't start him, but I wouldn't cross him off your list as a potential trade-in option later down the line in the season. But if I was going to start one of them, Jayden Short probably gets the nod for me. But that early buy, it's probably something that might swing in someone else's favor in the end, just because there's that early buy to navigate.
Yeah, I think if you're really struggling and you kind of want someone with a bit of consistency and you're going through the defensive list and you feel a bit lost in space, he could be a half decent selection just to sort of round out with a bit of consistency.
I think you'll be able to get both of these guys at 490k at some point in the year. So I don't think they're must-haves, unless the preseason role is Jayden Short or Nick Vlaston. They've taken 10 kick-ins, they've played in from 10, and they're literally using them as the single way out of defense. So that's the only asterisk.
January.
Yeah.
It's the January problem.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about too many what ifs if we can.
Will Powell at Gold Coast, defender, 91.9 across 18 games, 9 games above 90, $513,500. Clarky, you traded him into your team last season. Did he burn you enough for you to completely discount him this year?
I don't think he burned me in an outright fashion of he just started playing poorly. I think the role and the way that he was being used in those high-scoring games changed as it went on. So he had a couple of games where he was really being used as a main distributor in that deep back line, and they were using him to break through and get the ball pushed into the midfield and forward. And then he just wasn't... It just wasn't going his way or anywhere near him for a couple of games, which ended up pulling him out. I think really he's kind of a trap. He's someone that you want to trade into rather than start if that was the direction that I was going. Dimmer is going to do a few things at Gold Coast as well, so there is that uncertainty in just exactly what the game plan looks like, and we'll know who he's going to be favouring and who he really wants to do those things and to be those main distributors. So that Will Powers touches were really what dictated his scoring. So the games that he was scoring well in, he was being utilized really effectively and a lot. And then he would just disappear.
Yeah, I'm looking through his numbers here on DFS. His points per minute were really high when they pushed him up the ground or started him in the wing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I watched all the games and know if he did that the whole season. I'm just looking at starting positions. He scored pretty well when he was starting as the wing. This is this is an opportunity for Dimmer to pick a couple of defenders that he wants to be ball magnets and be the next Jayden Short and Nick Vlaston. I don't know who he's going to pick. There's a world where that's Will Powell, but I agree. I reckon he's probably more of an upgrade target. He feels like a pod for the sake of starting a pod. If you're starting him, if you really believe in him as a breakout, then by all means start. But I think your starting team, pick players you like, right? But also, you don't need to start pods. You can bring pods in and differentiate yourself from round 2 or round 1 or however it works this year. Starting the good rookies and the good premiums is a good tactic because they will get you points and cash. What you do with your cash is that's where you spend it on pods. So he's definitely one that I'd be looking at as probably a quick early upgrade target if the role's there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Start players you like, but be reasonable to yourself. Be realistic.
Yeah. Venturing into your team, Clarky, now. Angus Brayshaw, 89.8 across 23 games in 2023, 10 games above 90, 502,000. Seen him in quite a few teams. He's quite a popular starting pick already. Where do you? What's your opinion on starting Angus Brayshaw?
It could go a few different ways. So there's a couple players from Melbourne's list in this defensive list that we've got. So it's Angus Brayshaw. We've got Trent Rivers in here as well, and Marty Hoare has recently re-signed as well with Melbourne. Angus Brayshaw as a defender was playing through that half back, and they kind of put him there to be someone who A, could rotate into the mid quite easily a couple of times a game, and B, somebody who is level-headed, has a really clean kick, and just is able to use the ball without panicking himself. And that's what Gus is really good at, and I love him for it. Clayton Oliver is a massive question mark, and we'll get into that, him specifically. But without knowing exactly what's going to happen with that, is he even going to be there round 1? That means that there could be upside for Brayshaw to increase his centre bounce rotations, which for years everybody knows that that's where Angus Brayshaw kind of would prefer to be. I don't think starting him is going with the narrative that kind of suits at the moment with all the question marks that we have. If you're going, there's upside there because he's going to get more mid-time as a defender, which is going to pump up his scoring, because I think 90 is probably about right for him as a halfback, and maybe like a couple of games and they're like a 120 or like a 130 where he gets 40 million disposals and absolutely has like 95% disposal efficiency. So there's a kind of a bit of a narrative that you have to tell yourself to really start him. For me, I champion anyone to pick a great player, but like I was saying before, pick players you like, but you kind of need to be realistic about what the output's going to be. And I think as a halfback, if he has a similar role to what he has last year, it's probably going to be around the 90, so he doesn't really represent value.
And you mentioned Trent Rivers as well, 84.8 over 23 games, 8 above 90. Another possible beneficiary of Clayton Oliver not being there. Lekdog, Brayshaw and Rivers, if you were selecting one, which one would you choose? But is there merit in picking one or the other?
Yeah, look, I think in pretty much every circumstance, I'm not going to pick either of these guys. But if I had to pick one, I think 100% of the time I'd be picking Trent Rivers. There's a few reasons. One, there's a sort of upside, sort of breakout opportunity there. Two, they used him a fair bit based on his heat maps. His possessions were sort of all over the place last year. There was games where he was deep in defense a lot. There was games where he pushed up on the wing, and there was even a few games where a lot of his possessions came in that forward 50. If that is solidified into a more defense pushing up into the wing role, I think there's definitely some huge upside for him. Question mark for me was probably over his usage of the ball. If he can clean that up, He'll improve his scoring. I think the raw stuff is there and the opportunities there, but you need to see it all sort of fall into place. So he's your classic. He's not a mid-pricer really, is he? He's like 470k, so he's an awkward price. But he's your pod you're stamping in your team and going, no, this is his breakout year if you're picking him. And I think he could do it, and I think he is more likely to go bang than Angus Brayshaw is. In that, I'm talking in terms of ceiling this year, not necessarily floor. Brayshaw has a lower floor or a higher floor, but a lower ceiling. That's where I'm sitting.
It's really interesting the people picking Brayshaw, but then in the same breath talking about the buy rounds and talking about the players you can't select, because Melbourne obviously participated in opening round, but these people are just as quick to lock in Angus Brayshaw as a defender, and there's no right or wrong strategy with these buys because it hasn't happened yet, so you don't know what the strategy is supposed to be. But it's just interesting that he's locked in, but they're not locking in they're not locking in anyone else because of those opening round buys that people are stressing about. So I find it interesting that he's the one that they're locking in, considering what you said, that he doesn't really have a high ceiling, but he does have a quite a high floor. So I don't know. It's just an interesting that he's the one that people are jumping on as a lock in defense.
Yeah, since 2018, he's had a season average low, which was 2021 of 67, a career average high in 2022 of 100, and then just sort of middle, like 80 to 90-ish rest of the time. And I reckon that's probably what he's getting you. The best case ever scenario gets you 100 points. Again, at that 513k price range, you can find that later on. I think it's probably a quotation marks safe pick, but I don't think there's upside there. Whereas Rivers just has a little bit of something, you know? He jumped from 59 to 85 from 2022 to 2023, which is a fair jump. And I think with a few tweaks, we could see another 10 to... If he repeated that jump or got it up to 95 to 100, I wouldn't sit here being super shocked.
And the popular rookie is in defence, James Trezise, 207, almost 208k, 93 in his one game in the final round. Thanks for debuting him. Tom Brown, Josh Gibkiss, Marty Hoare, Toby Pink, Riley Hardman, Will Graham, and Sam Closey. They're all players who people will be keeping their eye on for a potential start in round one.
Yeah, I love Hardiman as a prospect. Don't know if he starts round one, but he's one I've certainly got circled. And yeah, I've seen a lot of hype around Josh Gibb because he does feel like, and even Marty Hoare, those players that debut, play games, and then disappear for a year for whatever reason, they're always popular when they return, whether they're good or not. So I think we've got quite a few cheapies that we can pick from in defence. And you always end up with more than you think you're going to.
On to the midfield. Clayton Oliver, 674,000. I don't think anyone's picking him at this stage because we don't know if he's going to be there.
Hope the young man's all right and getting the help that he needs.
Yeah, won't be picking him. Even if he comes back this week, trains every game and rocks up around one, I will not be picking him.
Christian Petrarca, 119.5 across 23 games. All scores above 90, 667,700. He's probably going to be the main beneficiary of no Clayton Oliver.
Yes.
I'll leave it to you, Clarky.
I don't... What else is there to say? His record speaks for himself, and he's going to win the Brownlow this year.
Jeez.
I saw a
McDonald's back in the league, bro.
Yeah, bring back Tom to set off some brotherly rivalry. I unequivocally love Christian Petrarca with every single piece of me. Before we recorded this, I watched just a little highlight reel from training of Christian Petrarca, and oh Lord, give me a case of the vapors, gentlemen. I think he will use this as an opportunity to do what he needs to do and step up as a leader of the club. He already was before, but I think he let himself, on those sort of more down games, he will kind of let himself be played out of it or step back a little bit when he needs to step forward. And you see Jack Viney kind of does the reverse of that, where Viney just gets what he has to do done. But those big games are when he goes, oh, hang on a second, like, I need to do this. So Christian Petrarca without Clayton Oliver, I'd probably be interested, and if I was better prepared, I probably could have done this myself, but to see the comparison of what he did without Clayton Oliver. But I guess the majority of 2023 or the end of 2023 was enough of a indication of what Petrarca is capable of without him. So for me, I think he's an easier lock as you can pick of any of the premium midfielders, just to give you someone with a safe floor and a captain option every week.
Yeah, so my only question marks are probably had a slower run home last year in terms of scoring. Is that because of the mounting pressure? It wasn't amazing in those final games, but I'm that's kind of if I'm trying to find a reason to talk myself out of him. I think he's a pretty easy selection. I don't know if we're talking about is there upside, will he do the same thing again or will he drop off? I think he'll probably do the same again, maybe a slight drop off in terms of scoring, but locking in a dude who I think's an absolute lock for a 115 plus. I think that's absolutely fine. And we know what the path to success is, right, for him, or for increasing his average from last year, which was 120, which is very hard to increase on. And that's having no Clayton Oliver in the team. Well, guess what? Clayton Oliver might not be in the team. So I think he's a very, very easy selection. He plays lots of football as well, which is a huge tick. We love that in our premiums. But yeah, you're picking him. This isn't a value proposition. You're just picking him because you want, for the same reason we picked Clayton Oliver for the last 5-6 years. It was like, I want a guy who's going to score all the points this week.
Next player on our list is Luke Davies-Uniacke, North Melbourne midfielder, 113.6 over 14 games in 2023, 12 of those above 90, 635k. Here's my issue with North Melbourne and Luke Davies-Uniacke. Even if he did not appear on the injury report throughout the year, throughout the week, he would be a late out in games, and then they wouldn't tell us the reason until afterwards. That's my only issue with selecting him.
Yeah. I mean, what's he priced at, Damo? Sorry, repeat that for me.
635k.
Oh, yeah. So he is an absolute prime candidate to become an Uber Primo. We said that last year, and in his first 2 weeks, he pumped out a 143 and a 155. Run home last year since returning from injury, round 16 onwards. He went 122, 94, 134, 129, 133, 127, 106, 125. I don't know what that is in average, but it looks like it'd be about a 120 plus. Is he going to be fit? Is he going to play every game? Because he's absolutely dead set, has everything in the world set up for him to be potentially the best Supercoach scorer. If he plays every week, the best Supercoach scorer for this year. But I just don't know if I can invest 635k in a guy when I have some question marks over his body.
There's another North midfielder as well that I think I have a little bit more interest in, purely because of those reasons as well, if I had to pick one. But I also would probably think that maybe Davies-Uniacke was more unlucky than anything else, rather than, it being a matter of he wasn't fit and couldn't get right. Like, sometimes it's just a shit year. And I think when he was on the park for the most part, he did really perform. But it probably didn't quite live up to his 2022 kind of breakout, and like you said, on the cusp of being an Uber premium. Is that the kind of capital you want to invest in a guy like that when, we've already covered off like a Christian Petrarca, who's in the grand scheme of things not that much more expensive, and there's a number of other players around that price mark who are probably going to represent a bit more consistency.
I guess I guess the counterpoint, if I'm speaking for LDU, who by the way I started last year, if I'm speaking for LDU as a fan of his, I'm like, well, he's 635k or whatever it is. If I start him and he scores the way we think he's going to, his average is from 2021 85 up to 101 up to 114. If he scores the way we think we're going to, no one else is going to be able to jump on board. And if he does get injured or he does miss a game, we can trade him out to another Uber premium. So I always get stuck in picking like the super old classic, like, nah, he's done it for the last 10 years. One more year, we'll pick him. LDU, he's pretty good, man. And he's only 25. Like, he'll only be 25 when the season starts. Well, halfway through the season, whenever it is. Hasn't played 100 games yet. This could be the cheapest he is all year. It could be.
And the midfielders from that draft class are now entering their prime, where they're going to be possibly the most Supercoach relevant they're ever going to be. So this year is the year to select him for that jump if he is going to make it. And as you said, it's better to invest the money now and only use one trade to trade him out rather than trade him in and then have to trade him out later that uses two trades.
Let me put it this way. I've just opened my team picker and looked at it, and he's in my team. So I must be pretty high on him. I think I might have sounded a bit negative at the start. He must be good. He's in my team.
I'm just looking through the list here as well, Damo. Do we talk about the Jai Simpkin factor?
We can talk about Jai Simpkin, yeah.
Because I think he is. If you're not that sold on Luke, and it comes to the old thing that we always say, Luke Davies-Uniacke, you're injured until you're not. Right? So whatever run it was that kept him out of form. But if you're really interested as well, I think Jai Simpkin is someone that we should be looking at as far as North Melbourne midfielder. Because... Sorry, you go.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, what's Simpkin's role? What is it? Because he's never been a particularly high scorer. He has had moments and weeks, strings of weeks where he has scored well. He's never been a high scorer. Is he going to take a leap, or is he going to return to his form of sort of a 90-plus average? That would be my question.
I think there's a necessity for him to lead by example. Even though he had a down year, he's probably attractively priced as well. It's, what is it, 443? So he's someone at this point where North Melbourne are, it's deep in a rebuild period. He's 18 games in 2023, 75, was that 79.3 Supercoach average, on a year where they didn't have a coach for most of the year. They didn't really have any sort of... Harry Sheezel was probably the only real bright spark, Supercoach-wise. 2 concussions, finger injury. Another year where I think there are factors that impacted his performance and probably represent some decent value, because I think he can make that leap to be a 90-plus guy.
I think there's a world where you could potentially have them both, Damo, but we're going to end up with 700 North Melbourne players in our team.
Yeah.
For the first time in a long time, North Melbourne are very Supercoach relevant for very different reasons across the board. So
yeah,
I think you got to bring some balance into who you start and who you leave, but you could probably make a case for about half their list at this point. So I think you just got to pick the players that you know what you're going to get rather than the players that might be good and might not be good.
Is there a fear, again, this is the preseason theorising, is there a fear that North Melbourne actually becomes Hawthorn when for years and years they won a lot of games but they had no Supercoach relevance to it all? Does Clarko Hawthornify North Melbourne and flatten everyone's ceilings but raise everyone's floors? Is that a thing that could happen? I don't know.
I think that just comes with the Clarkson game plan, and I don't think it had anything to do with the roles he gave players. I just think that's the way that he used the players that he had.
It's interesting stuff. 443k again, awkward price, but maybe we need to reassess. There's risks you got to take. I think we're going to end up with one or two 400k players in our teams. Probably, hopefully, one more than two. And if you sat there and you said Jai Simpkins in my team, I probably wouldn't think it's crazy.
Damo, let's talk about some Richmond and Gold Coast midfielders now.
Next player, Tim Taranto at Richmond, 106.7 over 23 games. No longer available as a forward, 18 games above 90, 596k. How is Adam Uze going to use Tim Taranto?
Great question, and that's kind of what makes him yucky to pick.
Look, here's the thing about Tim Taranto. I got absolutely panned last year because I didn't want to start him. And I know he averaged 107, and I know, but it was the inconsistency. He started the year on fire, so I obviously did start him, and it went well. But that back half of the year, 72, 84, 117, 91, 75, 85, 95, 96, 67, it's a bit yuck. It's a bit yuck. And I don't want that. I'm happy to take that risk when he's a forward or when he's a defender, but I don't want to take that risk as a starting mid. And I know it's kind of fashionable to avoid players who lose DPP, and sometimes there are players who lose DPP who you should still be considering. Tim Taranto to me is just not one of them. Like, he's just going to, at some point, he's going to go on a shit run. And now, last year it was the back half of the year, which is annoying, but maybe it's the front half of this year. I don't know. I just don't like anyone who butchers the ball that much.
In that back half of the season, there were some games where he'd be finishing up with 43% disposal efficiency and he's given away 5 free kicks. So
he tackles a lot, which helps keep that number, that scoring up. But it's, the tackling drops off, but the disposal efficiency stays the same. I don't know, man. It's a bit messy for me.
There's a part of me that would have enjoyed having the dead Jacob Hopper because at least I knew what he was going to get.
We'll talk about the next 3 players as in one go. So Noah Anderson, Matt Rowell, and Tuke Miller, all from the Gold Coast. Noah Anderson averaged 104.9, Matt Rowell averaged 102.3, and Tuke Miller averaged 97.6. These 3 players are probably the core of that Gold Coast midfield, but we're hearing all this talk about who else is going to be in that midfield, and it's just a matter of what other role are these players going to have? What other ways are they going to get their points if they're not in the midfield?
Well, I think excuse me if this is something everyone's saying, I don't know. I think of the 3, Tuke Miller's the one who's most likely to be used away from the midfield and up in the forward line. I think that's a realistic possibility. Now, this is a guy that averaged 120 in 2022, 125, Jesus Christ, in 2021. He's a beast, but equally, I think he's probably the most, I don't want to say most versatile, but he's probably the one who they can afford to move around. Like Matt Rowell has to be in the midfield, and Noah Anderson, you don't want to stunt his development by really moving him around. So I think those 2 are locked into the midfield. And as I've said since their draft, Noah Anderson is better than Matt Rowell, and that's just a fact. Tuke Miller, he kind of presents value to us if you think he can get back to what he was. But I think of the 3, Dimmer would be more likely to ask him to sacrifice his game at times than the other 2.
We'll talk about him a bit later, but there's also the likes of Sam Flanders, who could potentially be part of that midfield mix. There's Ben Ainsworth, who's supposedly going to see some midfield minutes. And then they've drafted some players that will need midfield time as well, or should maybe see midfield time as well. So there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, and I feel like there's only a couple of players who you can really bank on getting the bulk of the minutes.
Yeah, I don't particularly enjoy any of those selections, given what's around them.
545 is very cheap for Tuke Miller. If they come in and say, no, he's 100%, he's our gun, he's the jet, he's our 100% key cog in the midfield, he's the one to pick of the bunch. But I just have this feeling in the back of my head that he'll get asked to do a couple of other roles. which would make Noah Anderson the more appealing of the three to me. He's also the most expensive. We do have kind of a luxury because of their early buy. I don't know what the tactic is if people are going to start them and rest them, but I'm assuming if you've got an early buy, you're going to look at picking those guys up after their buy rather than as a starting selection. So I'd be just taking a look at them for at least the first couple of weeks and then reassessing after that anyway.
Gold Coast are playing in round 0, aren't they?
Yes.
Against Richmond.
Yeah,
but I don't think that's going to give me enough data to then bring someone in for 1 week.
Oh, no,
have them sit on the bench and then...
I was thinking in terms of at least we get that earlier look, and then if anything, A goes up or down, that could be advantageous to pick them up after that bye.
Yeah, and the good news is they'll still have, if I'm doing maths correctly, because they got the round 3 bye, they will still have the price change in round 4 when most people will have their prices changed the first time. I think, that maths is correct.
It's certainly math. It's certainly math. At the very minimum, I'll give you that.
I have said numbers.
Gold Coast have the second bye. So round 2 is Brisbane Carlton. Round 3 is Gold Coast the Giants.
Okay.
Yep. So they will play round 0, round 1. Oh, so their price will increase. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yes. Yep. Ignore everything I just said.
Bad math.
And there's some North Melbourne mid prices who, well, actually, one of them's a cheapie, but we'll talk about all three of them. George Wardlaw, 365k. Dylan Stevens, 324k. And then Colby McKercher, 202k. Colby McKercher's pretty much locked as long as he's picked in the round 1 team, you'd think. I've seen George Wardlaw in a few teams, and I've even seen Dylan Stevens in a few teams, but I don't know if I like any of the North Melbourne mid-priced sort of selections.
I think Wardlaw has an opportunity. I think his game style is good for Supercoach. I think the core mid is going to be LDU, Jai Simpkin, and someone else is going to be their big 3. I don't think it's going to be Taron Thomas. I don't think it's going to be Liam Shields. It might be Will Phillips. I think of the guys they have on their list, the most likely for it to be is George Wardlaw. And at 365, he's a risk, but he could be someone that pumps out. If everything lands his way, just because of how his game's built, he could jump up to an average of 80 plus. Is that enough as a stepping stone? Probably not, but maybe he's just an interesting name. Colby McKercher's a lock. Dylan Stevens is an interesting one. Like, I've got him in a bunch of keeper leagues. Yes, he got traded. Yes, new team, new opportunity. I don't know if he's that good. And if he is, he's probably playing on a wing anyway, or he's being the 23rd or 24th man, or how many men are going to be on the bench this year. So he's probably not that enticing, but I just think we should really keep an eye on George Wardlaw.
Yep.
Okay. And then some cheapies to keep an eye on. Caleb Windsor at Melbourne, 180k. Jake Rogers at Gold Coast, 148k. And then Kane McAuliffe at Richmond, 117k. Kane McAuliffe averaged 143 across 6 games in the Sandful under-18s. So he knows how to find the ball and knows how to use it. So if he gets an opportunity early or at any point throughout the season, he's probably going to score well.
Agree. I really like Caleb Windsor as well, but at 180k, it's probably a little bit much.
Moving to the ruck line, we've got Jared Witts at the Gold Coast, 106.1 across 21 games, 593k. Because of the early buy, there's nothing wrong with the selection. It's just not a fruitful selection, I would say.
It's right. You're basically debating, do I care about that first buy, or am I just picking the only ruckman on their list? And I know they have a couple other guys who call themselves ruckman, but like, it's Jared Witts or bust, right? And you know what he's going to give you. He's going to score 100 to 110 points every single game. It's nice to lock that in. He might miss some games, but he'll probably only miss one or two. I think most ruckmen are going to miss a game or two this year. How many games do we have? 23 games, something like that. Madness. It's crazy. You're paying a premium for a guy who you know what you're going to get, but I just think this year we have so much value opportunity in the ruck line that it probably rules him out when you combine it with that early buy.
The Jared Witt selection almost feels like your Riley O'Brien selection from last season, Lekdog.
Yes. Look, Riley O'Brien tends to finish in the top 3 or 4 for total points. Now, if I had just started Tim English and not been such a cheapskate, everything would have been fine. Did I start Riley O'Brien or did I bring him? No, I traded in Riley O'Brien because I started Gawn and I felt very smug when he scored like 180 or whatever it was in round 1, and then he scored 0 in round 2 and I had to trade him out, or however that went. But yes, I bought in O'Brien instead of English because I was like, I'll just have 95 points every week. And he kind of gave me that, but it's not very fun.
No more Brodie Grundy at Melbourne. So Max Gawn has come in underpriced, people are saying. 583k, Clarky. Is Max Gawn actually underpriced?
He's probably underpriced, but not by as much as people think. A 104 average, we have to remember that Brodie Grundy didn't really split that much time with Max for his 104 average. Max missed a couple games, and that was where Grundy shined. And then he came back, and there was a little bit of a split, didn't kind of work out, and then Brodie Grundy just disappeared into the ether. So I am for starting Max Gawn. If you started him, I wouldn't be like, this is a terrible selection. Because he's an easy 120 guy. He's got a talented midfield group around him. He's still one of the best ruckmen in the league. But there's a lot of value around this year. So I think you could probably even go a little bit cheaper with some of the options if you wanted to really Lekdog out and go cheapskate.
I'm not just a cheapskate. I'm just trying to ask myself, what's the most likely outcome? And often that means pure value.
The concern I have with Max is probably a bit of durability. He does have a habit of playing through and slowing down. But on that being said, he also has a habit of taking moments and standing up and just going, no. I'm just going to get like 6 intercept marks in a row because we just need it right this second. And I'm not going to do this again for another 5 games. So enjoy it. Did Max have a 200 last year? Did I make that? Did that happen?
He had a 215 against the Lions.
Insane, right? And that's what he's capable of. So you're paying for that. And you're paying for one of the best ruckmen. But I guarantee there's probably a game or two where Tom Fullerton spends some time in the ruck to give Max a rest. Or for some wild reason, Melbourne bring in Will Ferrell just for 5 minutes.
To remake Step Brothers. Look, he's 32. He's a big beast of a man. He can score over 200 in a game, and he can also occasionally score like 60. So at 585k, I'm looking at him. What's the most likely outcome? The most likely outcome to me is that he scores more. He averages more than 105 points a game, which is what he's priced at. So it is value, but I don't expect him to average 120 points a game. So if he averages 110, I think you could find with that 585k probably a midfielder and a cheaper ruck and get a better combo of total points. However, he's in my current team.
Affect your decision on that? Obviously not if he's in your current team, but the early buy I think is probably a little bit of a concern as well.
So he's got buys in round 6 and 14.
Yeah.
Do they play in round 1?
They play in round 0.
Round 0. So you're getting one less game as well there. That's, as I said though, I think pretty much every ruckman you're going to pick, you're going to miss a game from them. So it's tough. I don't know. If you pick him, he's going to be good.
Yeah.
But I think you're right that there's a lot of value floating around.
And pretty much the same price as Max Gawn is Toby Nankervis at Richmond, 104.3 average, only $600 less than Max Gawn.
Yeah, same conversation, Damo, except he's going to get suspended for 6 games. Oh, but he's the captain now. Yeah, he's still going to kick someone in the back of the head.
Yeah, probably don't pick Toby Nankervis if I had to give any advice this episode. Probably not.
I really like Toby Nankervis as a player. As a super coach selection, though, I just can't endorse it just because he misses too many games from too many different stupid reasons.
Yeah, I like Toby Nankervis, the martial artist, personally.
So in 2022, he played 22 games, which was great. 2023, 15, 2021, 16, 7, 2020, 9, 2019, 21 and 21 in 18 and 17, but they're like 700 years ago. He misses games for dumb reasons, as you said, Damo. No thank you.
And North Melbourne have a new number 1 ruck in Tristan Sherry, 72.9 across 9 games last season, $407,000. There is upside to this guy, but I just don't think he's going to be 105 average sort of ruckman.
Do they have any other ruckmen? Who have they got on their list? Taylor Goad, Hamish Free.
Charlie Comben, is he on their list?
I think they're playing him as a key defender now, aren't they?
Oh, God. Okay.
Or is that Coleman Jones? It's one of them.
Am I thinking of Coleman Jones?
They're both tall people.
Yeah, and they also drafted Finbar Maley, who was a standout in their recent match simulation as well. So,
well, if Finbar Maley becomes their number 1 ruck, I'll pick him, Damo. But I don't think that's going to happen. So it's basically what I'm saying is it's essentially Tristan Sherry for them or bust. He hasn't shown us any real reason to pick him. He scored 1 ton last year. I know it's hard to judge him when Todd Goldstein's always been around. But you're really taking him as a mid-pricer and going, he's going to become a 100 point per game player. I have no evidence to suggest that's going to happen. But if you believe that North Melbourne's midfield is going to be better, well, part of that has to be getting tap outs from the ruckman, right? So I think you're selling yourself. You got to sell yourself a story for Tristan Xerri. And there's too many twists and tails in that story for my liking.
And then cheapies to think about is Sam Naismith, 123k. And we mentioned him earlier, Finbar Maley, 102,000 for North Melbourne.
Naismith will be great in the 3 games where Nankervis is suspended and he's not injured. He's going to be really good in those games.
And moving to the forward line, Shai Bolton, Richmond, forward mid, 96.7, 23 games, 540k. It's so hard to trust so many players in this forward line this year.
I don't like the forward line. Forward line scares me. I don't want to pick Shai Bolton. I don't want to do it. But
you don't have to.
Statistically, it could be all right. It's probably not. I don't want to do it. Next, don't pick him.
Well, I mean, look, of available forwards this year,
he's one of them.
By total points, it goes Luke Jackson, Charlie Curnow, Shai Bolton. So Shai Bolton is the 3rd best forward based on last year that we have available to us. He played 23 games and he averaged 97. He's under 550k. Legally, I can select him as a player. He is an option, and it's a dearth of forward line options this year. But is he someone you're going to keep all year? That's the question. If you pick him forward, you're hoping your midfielders get forward status later on. Is he someone you're going to want in your team for the full year? Is the question you have to ask yourself.
I don't trust anyone whose name I can't pronounce on the first go.
To be fair, that's a lot of people for you.
Is it Shay or Shy?
Just say it differently each time.
And Dustin Martin, also available in the forward line, 527,000. Is he past it? Can he return to his previous form?
Do you mean will he be dusting it off this year? Thanks, Lek.
Awful.
That's me, baby.
Here's the thing about Dusty, right? We think of him when we remember him for Supercoach as the guy who went 100 plus every year, and he had that 1 year where he was really good in 2017. 2019, he averaged 100. 2020, averaged 101. We're not even counting that. And since then, he's gone 93, 87, 94. So he's probably going to average, if I'm looking at my likelihood of things to happen, he's probably going to average 90. If he's going to average 90, I'll pick him up in the second half of the year at 480K.
Can we have a segment that's just called Lekdog's Likelihoods?
Dustin Martin averaged 140 in 2017, which I'm just now realizing is 7 years ago.
Don't do that. Don't do that, Damo. Don't. How dare you? How dare you on our podcast that we built together make me face my own mortality in front of all of the listeners?
Dustin Martin, I think, is a pretty low ceiling pick and not one I would be doing in my starting team. He feels safe because he's a recognizable name, but I'm going to be trying to go as cheap as humanly possible in the forward line. Stacking mid and defense is probably the goal this year.
Yeah, that strategy makes the most sense.
Sam Flanders at the Gold Coast had a great end to the season, averaged 106.1 after round 14, but 88.4 for the season as a whole. 494K. We mentioned him earlier as a player who we think is going to see midfield minutes, but the truth is we don't know how Damien Hardwick is going to set up that team, and Sam Flanders probably isn't in that midfield rotation as a lock at the moment.
I think that's a reasonable assessment. And I know I've been shit-talking this guy for several years, and yes, it's because I traded him in his first year in a keeper league. That's the primary goal, is for me to will into existence his downfall. But last year, and I was right until I was wrong. I was right that he was a bad starting selection last year. And then he came back from injury or form or whatever it was, and he averaged about 784 points, which is really good. As much as I want to shit talk Sam Flanders, as much as I want to say, oh, what about the role? What about this? What about that? He's sub 500K. He's a forward option. And he was pretty damn good last year. So I'm going to call him a 100 averaging player, and he's priced at averaging 88. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's a case of if trends continue,
Again,
situation.
Awkward with that early buy. Round 3 buys, yuck, man. The AFL has ruined everything. I know we all know that, but they've ruined everything.
In terms of fantasy sport, I don't think the AFL care.
Yeah, well, they should care about
AFL not caring about something they should probably care about.
I play every game in Queensland in round 1. I have no issues with that at all. But why would you make most of the league wait an extra week? It doesn't make any goddamn sense.
I was thinking about this morning. I have no issue with them having a opening round a week earlier, but don't make it a separate round. Make round 1 a split round.
Yes.
So there's 4 games on one weekend and 5 games on another weekend. Make that round 1. Don't have 2 separate rounds, and don't then add in buys then to make it complicated throughout the season. I don't think the AFL really thought about this.
They've done that before, Damo. Remember they had Sydney at GWS, I think it was. They would open up the season a week before. No one would give a fuck, and then the season would actually start. But a split round is way better than making. It's just such a drainer on the fans who have waited months and months and months and months, and they're like, sick, football's back. Oh shit, my team's not playing this week. That sucks.
Just formalize the preseason properly.
Well, that'll never. So here's my thing.
Bring back the Wizard Cup, Lek. You're right.
I think this is all just a conspiracy just to get us used to having buys, because when Tassie comes in, there's going to be a buy every week. So I think this is purely just getting us used to the fact footy is going to happen from a Thursday to a Monday or whatever it is. And every week a team's going to miss out. Get used to it. I think that's what this is.
I think you're giving them too much credit.
Well, that's fair.
Do it like the NFL and just not have games on Saturday and just do Thursday, Friday, and was it Sunday, one game on Monday. Done. Split it that way. Do it weird. In fact, just start it all on a Wednesday, every game.
And they have about twice the amount of games as we do. So in terms, because they got twice the amount of teams. Anyway,
next player, Liam Baker at Richmond, probably sits in a similar basket to Dusty and Shy, in that we have no idea how he's going to be used by Adamuze.
He's like a fun, have him in your draft team. He'll get you 80 points guy. I can't see him being salary cap relevant.
I forgot that was even a player.
He's very versatile, which I think works against him, to be honest.
Yeah.
The next player crossed from Carlton to North Melbourne. His name is Zach Fisher. Available as a forward, but probably going to be utilised across halfback along with 1,500 other players at North Melbourne. 378k. Is the hype real? Can we buy into the hype of him actually playing across halfback?
Well, Damo, the fun thing about North Melbourne is that they're going to spend a lot of time in halfback, so all their players have to play there.
I mean, why? Why are we talking about him? He had 2 okay statistical games for Carlton when they played him defence last year, and he had 2 bad games when they played him in defence last year. He's never been a defender. He's never been a scorer. Yes, the role's there, but unfortunately the talent isn't. Actually, he's not a good selection.
I can explain this, Lek. And this is going to be a slight gripe that I have with the Supercoach community this week. Stop saying that players are following the Nick Dacos blueprint. Oh, it's running off the halfback through the... I don't know. Nick Dacos did it because he's a great footballer. Not everyone who has a role shift to halfback moving through the middle is going to be good.
This sort of players have also been doing it for fucking decades. So
yeah.
Look,
genetic nepotism.
I have Zach Fisher in some keeper Supercoach leagues. I'm happy with that result because I think he'll outscore his average of 67. However, I just don't see a path to success for him. I know Clarko likes left footers, but he's just never done it. He's just never done it. He's not a defender. He's never done it. He's never reached the heights that he should have. I always liked him, but he hasn't actually done it on the field. He's in the middle of his career, and they've got a million other options that they can use. He has 2 bad games. Well, it's the roll's gone. See you later. So, not for me.
Yeah, so I can hedge my bets. I will say that he can do it if he follows the Nick Dacos blueprint.
If he becomes Nick Dacos or Gary Ablett Jr., he can do it.
Yeah.
Next player on this list is Tom Lynch at Richmond. Average 64.3 across 4 games, 1 game above 90, 287k. This one's an interesting one because he maxed out at 570k the previous season when he averaged 94. So if you jump off at the right time, Tom Lynch could actually be a very good starting selection.
I think I've got him in my current team. I think he at 287k presents good value for us. And I agree, he's probably not a keeper and he's not like rookie priced, but in terms of, we know what his role is. We know he's best 22. We know he's cheap and we know he can score. And if it doesn't work out, it's a really easy fix to go down to a guy on the bubble. So he for me, that's a points on field sort of guy. Not sure how their forward line sort of stacks up. They're going to rely on him to kick goals to function, take marks, kick goals, which I think he can do.
It's always fun to pick a key forward in your forward line.
Lekdog, you're excited about this next guy. Jack Billings at Melbourne, 243,900. I'll let you have the floor.
dog shit. I know. Look, I know I've been very negative on a lot of these players, but you made me do these teams. I didn't choose them. Yeah, he's $244,000. You know why he's $244,000? Because he can't get game at St Kilda. Why the hell would he get a game at Melbourne? We saw Luke Dunstan do this. Jack Billings is the same. I know he's talking about being a best 22 player. Please, come on.
I wouldn't touch a Melbourne half-forward player really at all, just because this year, like, Simon Goodwin needs to figure out the forward line because it's his ass at this point. It's the biggest fault in Melbourne's game as a whole, and it's holding the team back. If he can't figure that out, that's why, St Kilda were willing to give up Jack Billings instead of going, oh, yeah, look, I don't know why. Like, what would we really want? They're like, no. It's for free. Come over. It's for free. I don't know. I'll figure out where it goes. Don't worry. It's your partner bringing something home and going, no. It's fine. We'll figure it out. We'll find space. We'll find, like, I don't need a bookcase.
Yeah, it's like when I took the 10-kilo jet printer from work because they were getting rid of it. I was like, it's a laser printer. We got a laser printer. It's like, why? Because I took it home on the train. It hurt my arms. It was really heavy. It's got paper as well. We don't need a printer. We haven't printed anything ever. We're not planning on printing anything at any point. Why'd you bring home the printer? Well, it was free. It's free. All right, we'll put it in the cupboard and we'll throw it out next year. Jack Billings.
Yeah. The reason as well is that I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation. So even if he is best 22 at the start of the year, that role, that opportunity is what, 1-2 bad games away from just disappearing. At which point he either hasn't made enough cash, or if you're lucky, has barely made any cash to make it really worth it. I think if there's absolutely nothing else and he's named round 1, sure. Like, if there's nothing else, right, and he's one of like 4 options, there's opportunity there for him to have his body right. That one of the things that was keeping him out of St Kilda, and new system, playing in a half forward. Melbourne really want to get it into talented half forwards. Sure, I can see that, but at this stage, Lekdog's likelihoods probably not.
When we play VFL Supercoach next year, he's going to be elite.
All I'm getting from that entire segment is Jack Billings is almost obsolete technology.
Jack Billings is a laser printer, and it's 2024.
Hey, at least I don't need a subscription to print off it, not like these new printers.
And some cheapies to
I wonder if we have to buy ink to fill him up. Did it come with ink, the printer, Lek?
It came with 2 ink cartridges, which, guess what? I still have, because you don't print things anymore.
All right, some cheapies to consider. Jed Walter, 198k. Zane Dersma, 193k. Colton Tholstrup, 153k. Braden George, 123k.
Sure.
And that brings us to the end of the players on this list. Lekdog, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Sorry for talking too much. It's been a while since I did a Supercoach content. Follow me on Instagram, Alexi Alexie_DOES, Alexi_does, and also follow me on YouTube because I'm doing vlogs about Warhammer, which is sick. Alexi does on YouTube, or you can search Lekdog on YouTube, and also Twitter, Lekdog, whatever. You'll find me.
I love that Lekdog has, only not that long been out of the Supercoach content game, but has come back with the energy of a man who has been a hermit for decades. Do they still have laser printers? I've got the cartridges.
I feel like I've been in the wilderness, man. I don't talk to that many people anymore.
That explains your Jungle Boy-like hair.
Clarky, thanks for coming on once again.
It's always a pleasure, Damo. We have a very nice show, and I like coming here every week.
This has been Footy Mailbag. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.